Hybrids nowadays come with smaller and smaller engines, or so it seems. And then the Camry shows up with a 2.5 litre. Now, regardless of whether you get the Camry Hybrid or the non-hybrid Camry, the engine remains the same. This is the same 2.5 litre naturally aspirated petrol engine with the power going to the front wheels. However, there are two key differences here. Firstly, the non-hybrid runs this on a typical Miller cycle, whereas this car runs an Atkinson combustion cycle, which produces less power and torque, but is significantly more fuel efficient. In order to augment that lack of power and torque, there is also an electric motor mated to this car's eCVT automatic gearbox, which sends power to the front wheels, which means that the Toyota Camry Hybrid is actually a little bit more powerful and a little bit more torquey compared to its non-hybrid sibling. Now, Toyota calls this new Camry an all-new model, but that's not strictly true because this car is actually something of a very deep facelift of the generation that we received previously. However, in terms of the aesthetic revisions, they are significant enough to demarcate this car as an all-new model, which means it's not necessarily creative truth. Up front, you now get this hammerhead style design with a protruding front edge which houses the Toyota badge, which is flanked by a set of full LED headlights replete with automatic high beam, as well as this distinctive daytime running light signature. This face was first popularized by the current generation Toyota Prius, which we do not get in Malaysia. Moving further down, we still get the same very large downturn grille that was again first popularized by the previous generation Camry, with a couple of LED fog lights integrated into that. Moving further down, you actually get active aero here, which helps to improve this car's aerodynamic profile and smooth the air as it goes over the front wheels. And overall, I do think that the face of the new Camry is significantly more aggressive than the vehicle that it replaces, which says a lot because the last car was already a very handsome looking thing. Now, it's down the side where this car really gives away the fact that it is just a heavy facelift because, for example, the glass house design and the design of the doors are basically carryover from the previous generation. But that's not a bad thing because the front and rear ends have been redone well enough that, again, from the side, it does look like a new car. Now, in terms of rolling stock, this car rides on 18-inch dual-tone alloy wheels with a diamond cut finish wrapped in Bridgestone tires, which are, again, very similar to what we've seen from the previous generation model, which means that in terms of overall performance and overall design, it does look pretty good. And Toyota has resisted the current trend of putting oversized wheels on cars, and instead, this car just looks very handsome. You now get an HEV badge on the front fender, like we've seen from vehicles like the Corolla Cross Hybrid and Corolla Cross Hybrid GR Sport. You get some chrome around the doors themselves, or rather around the windows, and they do look pretty good. Now, one thing that I would like to point out about this car that you might not be able to see from here is the fact that you get touch-type door handles on both sides, which is always good, and that little cutout there is for a light carpet, very similar to what you get on a BMW. Now, the overall execution of which, yeah, I mean, it works, but it's not as pretty as what you get in a BMW. But then again, this car is less than ringgit ringgit, as opposed to a BMW with a light carpet, which would cost you, what, 450,000 bucks? It's all right. Now, if you ask me, I do think the side profile of the Camry feels timeless. The overall nature of the design with its three-box shape, it's very typical saloon car, and I do think that this design will age very, very well over time. The other thing that you might not be able to see from this angle, or might have spotted from an earlier angle, is the fact that this new Camry Hybrid is the first Camry, if I'm not mistaken, to offer a full glass roof, which means that the inside should now be a little bit more brighter, a little bit more inviting than ever before. And that timelessness extends into the rear, where you've only seen very small revisions to the boot lid design, as well as the tail lights, which actually mimic the design of the headlights up front. You get strong Camry scripting here, an HEV badge there, because this is the hybrid. And of course, you do get a little bit of contrasting down there. We've lost the dual exit exhaust because this is the hybrid, but overall, I do still think this back end looks quite handsome. Now, one thing the Camry Hybrid does not offer for the money is a powered tailgate. But the thing is, that's not really that big of a deal because it is at least spring-loaded. And once you do open the tail, you will find that there is a huge amount of space back here, which makes it incredibly practical. Golf bags, luggage, suitcases, whatever. not an issue in here at all. And of course, you can get accessories for this car, just like the boot sort of cargo space protector plastic cover thingy that we have on this car, which is certainly something that I would take if I were buying one. In terms of other amenities, you do get hooks on either side, and it is worth pointing out that there is no space under the boot floor. There is a space saver spare wheel, but if you need more space, you can't fold the rear seats. That's because this Camry, just like the previous generation, offers electrically adjustable rear seats, which means that they cannot fold. But the number of people who fold the rear seats in a Camry are very, very small. So, tough. Now, the interior of this new Camry certainly feels like an all-new generation because they have thoroughly revised this cabin design, and it does feel like a newer, fresher car. So for example, we now get a much larger central touchscreen, which integrates all the features that you want in a manner that is much easier to use compared to the outgoing model. Plus, the placement also means that in terms of visibility, it's now slightly improved. This also offers wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but I prefer a wired connection because it charges my phone. But the best part about this screen is actually what it doesn't do. So for example, while this car certainly offers a 360-degree view in the typical Toyota fashion, mercifully this only happens when the car is stationary, where if you actually put the car into a gear, it shows off in a much more convincing and typical manner. But beyond that, the best part about this again is what it doesn't do, because all of the air conditioning controls live here, not here. This has nothing to do with this, which means that here, this is where you control your temperature, you can control your fan speed, you can control your ventilated seats, or just press the automatic button and let the car do the work. That to me is excellent, because the typical Toyota buyer wants simplicity, they want ease of use, and this is the easiest way to utilize systems that are very basic and typical in any car. Now, moving beyond that, this center stack has also been redesigned. You get no less than 3 USB-C ports up front, as well as a wireless charger here. You get a couple of cup holders, as well as a decently sized storage area here, which is certainly large enough for a pair of sunglasses because there is no sunglasses holder up here. Your gear selector is also very typical, and you get physical buttons for your 3 drive modes, 3 separate buttons, as well as your EV mode and your electronic parking brake. Moving further back, you get a decently sized sensor storage bin, replete with a 12-volt socket. You get a decently sized glove box here, not lined in felt, unfortunately, but that's fine. And you're willing to forgive that because this steering wheel is electrically adjustable in a Camry. Now, this is great because it means that you can get into a very comfortable driving position, and once you do, there is memory setting for the driver's seat, which means that you can get very comfy, save all your mirror settings, and you can just get in the car and drive. Now, making that a lot easier is the digital instrument cluster up ahead of me, because this is a similar system to what we've seen before from other Toyota models, which means that it displays very nicely with a great refresh rate and fantastic graphics, and it is very customizable. You have no less than 3 spaces along the digital instrument cluster in order for you to figure out how you want everything to be displayed in front of you, which means that you can have your Camry exactly the way you want it. Manipulating that screen, as well as this car's advanced driver assist features, are this plethora of buttons here on the steering wheel, which all look and feel really nice. They're very convincing to use, and they feel very high quality. And if that's not enough, you also get a digital heads-up display right up ahead of you, giving you all the information that you need right in your line of sight, including things like your adaptive cruise control functions, which means that really you never have to take your eyes off of the road ahead, which is fabulous. Now, moving further down, there are a few things I would like to point out. Firstly, I do not understand why it is that cars like this still need to have manual headlight leveling. Surely we could make this automated by now. There are a bunch of other buttons here which control things like your illumination or the brightness of your screens, as well as a button for the rear powered windscreen blind, which is always nice to see. We also get a JBL audio system in this car, which works fantastically. And when you pair that to the fact this cabin is generally quite quiet, that means that you can really enjoy a comfortable, balanced soundstage in this car. Now, in terms of the ergonomics, being a Toyota, everything falls very easily to hand. Everything is relatively sensibly laid out. And while the buttons to my right knee, for example, might be a little bit of a mess in terms of its placement, because it is at least a button, it's not that hard to figure out how they work. It could be a lot worse. And overall, I do think that the front end of this Camry, at least, feels the way a Camry should. Plush and upmarket, yes, but also very easy to use, because the last thing you want in a car like this is unnecessary complication. Now, the back of the Camry is an equally plush place to be, with plenty of space for me. With the front seats that are in my driving position, about 170 centimeters, I have about that much knee room and about that much headroom, despite this car's sloping roofline and the sunblind for the panoramic sunroof. There is also space to tuck my feet in underneath the seat in front of me, but honestly, I don't need it because this car's wheelbase is long enough that I have plenty of space already. I have very good under thigh support back here. The material quality is just as good as it is in the front, although there are some hard plastics to be found, but overall life is pretty good. On top of that, I've got the sun blinds here on the side, as well as an adjustable shade for the rear, which I can manipulate via the touch panel that lives right here, which also allows me to change my temperature if I should so want it. In addition to that, I can also adjust the backrest angle of my seat. So if I'd like to sit bolt upright, I can. And if I would like to recline, I can do that too, which means that sitting in the back of a Camry is truly a very comfortable affair. Supporting this are a set of USB-C ports on the center console, as well as a set of crotch coolers, although it is unfortunate that I do not get air conditioning vents on the B-pillar, which would have made this a much more pleasant experience. Now, overall, I do think the back end of this Camry is as good as it's ever been, because it is decently practical enough. You get good materials all the way around, your cup holders and whatever. Plus, this touch-sensitive panel here allows me to manipulate enough functions for this car to feel like a proper upmarket executive vehicle. However, what took me by surprise over the last week-ish that I've been driving this car around is what happens when you're in the driver's seat, because it's a Camry. Surely not. The thing about a Camry is that this nameplate has been around for a very long time, and it is largely associated with middle management types who are normally in their late 30s or perhaps even their mid 40s. And so that kind of gave the Camry this rather unsavory image, this sort of uncle car kind of thing, when in reality, it really isn't. At least it hasn't been for the last two generations, including this one at least. Built off of the new TNGA platform, this car enjoys a certain degree of torsional rigidity that you just don't get in other cars within this segment. And the way that pays dividends is that from the driver's seat, this car is properly engaging to drive. It changes direction with a certain degree of agility that, again, you just wouldn't expect from a large saloon like this. And then when you account for the fact that, in addition to this, you also get this very punchy powertrain, because the primary response comes from the electric motor, it means that you generally have torque on tap whenever you need it. Pair that to a very, very well-judged suspension, you just end up having this really winning combination of a car that knows how to really satisfy in both ways. If you want something that's quiet and refined, it's perfectly good at doing that. I'm doing about 80 kilometers an hour down Jalan Ipoh, this Sultan Ismail, and everything is just fine. But if I should so want to, I can always put my foot down, let the speeds creep a little bit higher still, and then I have a properly fun car. And because this is the hybrid, it also means that when I come off the throttle, there is a certain degree of regen braking, not a lot, but a little, which means that when you are driving spiritedly, the car can slow down in a much more natural kind of way, and it just kind of feeds into this slightly more engaging driving experience. Now, I'm not sure if Toyota really wanted that to be the experience in the driver's seat of a Camry, but that is the experience in the driver's seat of a Camry. It's good. But perhaps what is of greater consequence to more buyers, of greater concern to more buyers, is the way this car is like to just drive day to day, when you're not driving spiritedly, when you're not in the mood, or when somebody's tailgating you like they are me right now. And when you're just sort of relaxed and just trying to get home or running errands or whatever, the Camry is a fantastic companion. Like I said, this cabin is incredibly refined. Even on the motorway at Malaysian motorway cruising speeds, this car remains impressively quiet. There is just a little bit of road noise, but not even enough for it to become intrusive. In fact, if memory serves, I believe the Volkswagen Arteon was far, far louder. Wind noise in this car, practically non-existent. And of course, you can drown out all of these unwanted noises with the JBL audio system that comes with this car, which means that sat in here, you get to curate your experience to feel exactly the way you want it to. Speaking of which, I appreciate the fact that while this car has drive modes, there aren't a myriad of settings for you to fettle. Instead, Toyota has just decided that they know better than you do, and so sport mode feels like sport mode, economy feels like economy, and normal mode just feels like normal. You don't need to go into a billion settings and change the way the car brakes and steers and accelerates and whatever. It just drives well, because their engineers know how to make a car that drives well. Now, in addition to all of this, There is, of course, the fact that the Toyota Camry comes as standard with the Toyota Safety Sense or Safety Suite or whatever, TSS, which basically encompasses your level 2 semi-autonomy driving systems, which means that this car does offer things like adaptive cruise control with traffic jam assist, autonomous emergency braking, lane keep assist, lane centering, rear cross traffic alert, a 360-degree camera, automatic high beam, safe exit assist, and God knows whatever other acronyms I managed to forget. Basically, it's fully loaded. Now, the thing about a Toyota, when it says that it's fully loaded, when it says it offers a safety suite of active safety features, you can trust it. Because having driven this car about 500 kilometers, I think at this point, I've been very happily using all of these active safety features, at least the ones that add convenience to my life, because they are reliable. The car accelerates and brakes and keeps you in lane and warns you, etc., in a way that doesn't feel intrusive. It is a way that feels natural, that feels assistive rather than annoying, which means that as I'm stuck in traffic, now I have the adaptive cruise control running and life is pretty good. And I will point out the fact that since some cars don't do this, with the adaptive cruise control on, the car can still regen brake, which means that I'm not wasting potential kinetic energy that could be recaptured into the battery, which is something that some Chinese car makers especially haven't yet managed to figure out how to integrate into their adaptive cruise control systems. Now, of course, here comes the question that a lot of you are asking. Yes, the car is nice to drive. Yes, it's very quiet and very comfortable, blah, blah, blah. But this is the hybrid, which means that fuel economy is the most important factor. And you're right, because if you don't care about fuel economy, you could save quite a lot of money and just get the non-hybrid version. Of course, you'll lose the powered rear seats. I think you might lose the sunroof. But generally, it's broadly the same experience in broadly the same car. But even after filming with this car, which meant the car was idling for a long time, keeping us and our equipment cool and charged, as well as a couple of long motorway runs at decent clip. Despite all of that, this car is averaging or reporting an average consumption of 5.4 liters per 100 kilometers, which for a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated large saloon like this is extraordinary. Now, bear in mind, I haven't exactly been driving this car particularly efficiently. I've just been driving it the way I would any other car. I'm not hypermiling it. I'm not trying to be efficient. And in fact, I've been driving it in normal mode this entire time, because what's the point? And even then, I'm still doing 5.4 to the liter or to the 100, which I think is, again, incredibly impressive without any degree of compromise. I haven't had to plug this car in. I've had to look for chargers. I haven't had to do anything. I just add fuel. In fact, they gave me the car with the full tank. I haven't even had to add fuel since then. And there is something to be said about the polish of this system, the way the engine comes on and switches off, the way it transitions between combustion power and electric motor. All of that stuff happens so seamlessly. And this is one of the hallmarks of Toyota's hybrid system. Because they were one of the pioneers, if not the pioneer, of hybrid powertrains, it means that they have a ton of experience in making systems like this work as well as they can. And the proof is in the Camry. As far as I'm concerned, I cannot think of another competitor within this space that can offer this blend of performance and efficiency, of comfort and reliability, of technology and consistency better than Toyota. And as far as I'm concerned, being sat in this Camry, I can completely understand why it is that there are still customers for this car in this day and age, even though the prices have crept well past 200,000 ringgit. Now, of course, for the amount of money that Toyota is asking for this Camry hybrid, there are a myriad of other options. In fact, if you want something that is perhaps a little bit larger, you could get a Moda C9 or a JQ J8, both of which are large D-segment SUVs. The J8 even offers 6 or 7 seats. But very few cars come as close to being as polished as a Camry. There is something about the way this car executes upon the ideas that it's decided that it wants, or the suggestions and the various specifications that this car offers. It just does it so well. I haven't had to second guess the car. I haven't been left to figure out menus or find settings. It's all exactly where I expect it to be. It is incredibly predictable, which means that this is the sort of car that you can get along with very easily and very quickly. There is no time for you or time needed for you to adapt. You just get in it and drive, and it works exactly the way you want it to. And that, I think, is worth paying a premium for. In any case, that concludes our review of the Toyota Camry 2.5 HEV. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon to be notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the links are in the description below, including the link to join our new WhatsApp channel. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe, and jangan bodoh.